What's up guys, PDC here, and today I'm going to be doing something I have not done in quite a while. It is not going to be a DPP live or Pokemon Showdown live. Instead it's going to be more of like a guide or just a talk. Probably more of the latter than the former. Since I can't ladder right now due to my internet being really just terrible. I can't, like, I tried to play a game. I don't think it's a Camtasia glitch. I think it's just my terrible internet. I tried to play a game and I just automatically got my ass DC'd and I couldn't recover it. So I figured, alright, fuck it. I don't want to record a live like this. So you know what? I'll do that tomorrow and today because I told you guys I want to put up daily content. I'm going to be uploading a talk. And what's the talk going to be if you haven't already read the title? PDC talks about DPP, my favorite tier to talk, bitch, and moan about. What I plan to do in this episode is really just talk about, for one, I want to talk about current team structures. So you know what, I need to write this shit down somewhere. Yeah, I'm gonna get a pen real quick. Alright, so I do want to talk about a couple things in this video, and it might be kind of long. Like, I don't want it to be over 40 minutes, but, you know, it's not going to be a guide, it's just going to be a talk. And I know Joey does these sometimes, and I don't know if you guys enjoy them, but, you know, I just like talking to the audience sometimes, and, that's what we're going to be doing today, and hopefully you guys are going to learn something along the way. So, first off, I think, let me just write some stuff down. I want to talk about current... I'm writing this stuff down, DPP. And after that, I'll probably talk about biggest threats. I'm writing this stuff down if you can hear it. And 3, maybe 4 or 5 things I'll talk about. Underrated threats. And 4, I guess I'll talk about best DPP players right now. And maybe 5, I'll say skills needed, so if you're coming into the DPP metagame, you know what to expect. Now, BKC has already made a guide like this. I'll link it down in the description. I have not watched it, but I know if it's you know, from BKC, even though the audio quality is really shitty, I know it's going to be a very good, informative video. So if you really want to learn DPP from the basics, you know, then you should watch that. But if you just, you know, if you're already familiar with it, even if so just slightly, then this is a good video for you to catch you up on what's going on right now. So actually, one second, let me pause this for just a second. Okay, so basically, I guess we're going to start off with this current Diamond Pearl Platinum Gen 4. What is it like right now? Well, DPP has kind of suffered the fate, less so than other metagames, I guess you could say. Then again, most metagames usually get revamped every couple years or so. But DPP, what DPP is right now, I'm going to be saying DPP a lot in this video. I'll try to limit it by saying Gen 4 sometimes. But what current Diamond Pearl Platinum is like is, I can say it's relatively annoying, stagnant, even boring to some. Even to veteran DPP players who love it and it is their favorite tier, it is very boring to some. And I feel like we're kind of regressing here, which is a little annoying because DPP is always so fresh. Usually, even if it's like, you know, however many years ago it's been since DPP stopped being the official metagame of Smogon. It stopped in late 2010, so it's going to be, you know, 6 years. This I think it was November or December, maybe October when Black and White came out. But basically with DPP. Currently, I can only say that it is infested with the same shit it was, a little different months, of course, different Pokemon, but same idea that it was as soon as it stopped being an official metagame. So what does this mean? For those of you who were not around 5 years ago, let me break it down for you. Now, I'm not going to be building a team here, I just had a team builder open and demonstrate Pokemon and stuff like that. But 5 years ago, back when DPP just, you know, died, I guess, you know, people still liked it, you know. I think DPP it experienced a different type of fate than a lot of, and there's a silverfish crawling up like my wall, like 4 feet away from me. I have so many of those in my fucking house, but anyway, I think a lot of people really like DPP. Now, for one, a little history, DPP is generally viewed, at least for a lot of people, the 2006 to late 2010, early 2011 era as the peak of competitive Pokemon. The reason for this is because everyone who was good, or nearly everyone who was ever recognized as a good, great, fantastic, top player of all time, best player of all time, played during this almost 5 year window. Now, during the end of Diamond and Pearl Platinum, you saw a lot of these players kind of quitting, leaving the scene. Earthworm stopped playing, I believe, in World Cup of 2011. I think that was his last big tournament until SPL 7, which was this year. You had big players, kind of retiring around that time. Generally speaking, you had just kind of the coming to an end of a really big era. Not to say 2012, 2013 were also not really competitive, but I would definitely say that this window, this 4 or 5 year window, up into early, maybe around the start of Black and White 2, I'll extend it to there. I'd say maybe 2006 until whenever Black and White 2 came out, was this really, my Wi-Fi just went down, so, my Wi-Fi just went down, that's really shitty. So I was gonna use replays to do bad stuff, but whatever, we can make do, because PS already has this shit set up, and I can always open PO if I need to really look stuff up. But you had these really great players, and they kind of just started to drift off after Black and White 1. Now, at the end of DPP, you had, I think, one of the most annoying type of fucking teams you could ever imagine facing. Now, what is this team that I'm talking about? I am talking about the Heatran for the fire, I'm talking about the Shaman for the grass, sometimes Celebi, and I'm talking about the Gyarados for the, or whatever water type. It was like Suicune, not Gyarados, Mega. Like Suicune, not Choice Band Suicune either, but the Fire, Water, Glass balance type of team, which, weatherless balance usually type of team, which was fucking everywhere during this time in DPP. It was absolutely everywhere. This is because during the end of the generation, a lot of the RMT teams were Fire, Water, Grass cores, because they were simply the best, or very, very good at the time. I remember there was this one dude, I forget his name, I think it was Legendary 07, made a really good team with this Fire, Water, Grass core. You had people like Rat Cheesy, whose team is basically the quintessential basic starter DPP team, because it's so simple to use, and it's really, in its time, it was a really good team, but, it obviously is extremely well known and doesn't hold up that well anymore, but, at its time, it was a fucking fantastic team. It was around, I believe, the Suicune, Heatran, and Breloom core, I believe, which, was really good, obviously. I think it had Suicune, I don't believe it had Starmie. Surprising to me how such a well-known team, which I face like every single time Smoke Tour comes around, I don't even remember the full team, but or at least I think there was a team, but you had that kind of team all the time in that era. The Roserade kind of balanced stuff, T-Spikes, Spikes, all that type of shit. You had that all the time, everywhere, till the end of that DPP. Now, this was kind of what it was, because, once a metagame is made unofficial, people don't give a fuck about that metagame for quite a time. The metagame usually stays stagnant as it is until people get tired of a brand new metagame, and they start going back and they start changing shit, and maybe they start applying team building strategies from the new generation to the old generation, and they mix everything up. So what happened to DPP? Well, old Diamond and Pearl really just festered for a while. I thought it was a boring metagame because it wasn't really anything new. It was the Shuka Heatran everywhere. It was, I guess you had the Kevin Garrett stall everywhere as well. People really loved using that team for quite a while. While the reason why that team was so good in its time, because, it's looked back at as one of the greatest stall teams of DPP. And I can tell you one of the reasons why is because nobody used fucking Breloom back then. For those of you who don't know, Breloom was not popular back when DPP was the main metagame. It was really unpopular, and I can tell you a couple reasons why. When Latias and Salamence were in the metagame, you had two strong answers to Breloom every time. And the metagame was really offensive and fast, too. It was either really slow, fat shit to beat Salamence, or it was really fast shit to beat Salamence. And Breloom, while, no one really wanted to use Breloom because every team had a Latias or a Dragon like Salamence, and it would just fuck Breloom over, and that was it, It just wasn't as good back then. But people, they slept on it. They thought, Breloom, even though those 2 dragons ended up getting banned, Breloom still isn't shit. What the hell is Breloom gonna do? It's not a great, it's not gonna do anything. It's slow. It has to rely on Focus Punch for its main attack move. It's sub. It has Spore, but it's so slow, and its typing is really not that great defensively. What can Breloom really do? And it was like that for a while until Rat Cheesy's team really came out of the woodwork and popularized Breloom. But Breloom still didn't catch on until around 2013 because, like I said, since DPP was a newly dead metagame, no one really wanted to catch on or innovate it, And I mean, even though there was stuff like SPL, if you look at the early, I wish I could pull it up, but my internet's down. If you could look at the early SPL teams, you'll see what I'm talking about. SPL1, SPL2. You'll look at, I wish I could pull these up. I really wish I could, because that'd be fucking awesome if I could, because I really would like to show you guys what the teams were like, if I could even find the old logs and stuff like that, but really that's what it was like, and my internet just went back up as a 1 bar. So, how does this connect to New Diamond and Pearl? Well, I feel like we are regressing back to that fire, water, grass core shit that was so popular at the very end. And everyone who's been around Pokemon for more than 1 generation knows that this shit happens. They always go back. Metagames, they advance, and they turn, and then they become terrible, but then they become fresh again. It just goes in cycles. Who has the best shit right now? And right now, people are using this Breloom, balance breaker stuff everywhere. It is fucking everywhere. And that's because Breloom is by far the greatest balance and stall breaker there really is in DPP. I think alone, if you have just like, 1 answer to stall, let me put a Breloom on my team, I'm not weak to stall anymore, you're not right. You're wrong. You're still going to be weak to stall or heavy balance. But just adding a Breloom means that even if your whole team is really fucking stall weak, just adding that Breloom kind of means that, you might have a fighting chance. You might have a decent chance to win if you just play your cards right, and you manage to pressure the whole team, and you sleep the right thing, and you hit the right shit. Because Breloom is just bulky enough that it can't really be killed by anything on stall, aside from something like Psychic Starmie or, anything like that. And the failsafes most stalls used, Scarf Tyranitar, can't do shit to Breloom. It's bait for Breloom, essentially. So that's why Breloom is so good against stall, because stall can't kill it, and the failsafes that stall usually uses, Scarf Tyranitar or previously Scarf Jirachi, although Scarf Jirachi is better against Breloom, but it doesn't like switching into a fighting attack. They're essentially useless against it. Now, Breloom is everywhere right now, and it is by far one of the most annoying fucking Pokemon to face. People don't get how good this thing is, and how, if you're fresh and new to DPP, you might think, oh, Breloom, what's that gonna do? Breloom is the quintessential stall breaker, quintessential, just Pokemon that you're gonna use if you're weak to stall. And I think the reason for that is because stall has recently, or at least heavy balance, has become a lot more popular, especially with Clefable being reintroduced, or not reintroduced, just introduced into the DPP metagame, because heavy balance and stuff like that, you'll notice a lot of really good DPP players gravitate towards stall or fatter stuff. Not everyone, but a lot of them do, or at least have in the past. And Breloom is a way that anybody can really just come in if they play their cards right, and the stall is even moderately weak to Breloom, or even just slightly, because if you're using stall, there is a pretty much guaranteed chance that Breloom is going to give you troubles. Even old stalls with like Rest Talk Gyarados and Rest Talk Rotom, If you have Rocks up, those Pokemon absolutely are fucking harassed by Breloom, because, one, it's obvious that Breloom's not going to be the only one battering them down. If you get Rocks up and you have a Breloom on the field, your Rest Hug Gyarados is pretty much a shitty counter, because you take 25%, you take a 25% from a -1 C-Bomb, or 23 or whatever, yeah, you are not going to be countering that more than once or twice. Unless you get a spin-off and continue to rest. But Broom is just really good right now, and I think it has kind of contributed to the toxic DPP metagame which we are currently in, this metagame phase. A couple years ago, you had a team which I can replicate right now. I'm not going to fill out sets, but it was basically Zapdos, that's it, Scizor, wait till that loads, Flygon, which was Choice Banded, it was Scarfsaur, it was Magnet Zapdos or Leftovers, it had Breloom, it had Starmie, and it had Heatran, which was Pasho. This was a really popular DPP build, I would say, in 2013 to around mid-2014. This was the beginner build, because BKC and Hot and Cold made it, and this team fucking slapped in its time. It had momentum, it had a spinner, it was everything that new DPP was. You know, it may have still had the Fire, Water, Grass, but it had everything that it was, and everything that it is now, or a lot of it at least. It brought the stall-breaking ability of Breloom, it brought the new meta of Starmie. Starmie was not used, at least from what I remember, all that much in Old Diamond and Pearl. At least I really can't remember it being used that much. It brought Zapdos once again, you know, into prominence. But Zapdos was like, it wasn't very common back then, but now it is again. A lot of people love using Zapdos now, and I include. I think Zapdos is a very good mon, and it is really just back into the head of DPP, because a lot of people love to use it. And it brought the U-turning, it brought, you know, all this new stuff, it brought Passotran, you know, it was a really just in general a cool, I would even say revolutionary build, because it changed DPP fundamentally. It added a whole new style to it. I love using, you know, U-turn plus Breloom is a fucking deadly combination, especially when you have 3 U-turners, and you could be bringing in a Heatran on, you know, Heatran, or keep bringing in a Tyranitar, which Breloom just eats up. So current DPP, you know, in conclusion, I don't want to stay on this topic too long, especially because we're probably at about the 20-minute mark here. It is infested with Breloom. It's absolutely insane. It's almost to an unhealthy amount how much people spam Breloom. You also have people who just spam Infernape, which I'm not saying is not like, it's not like it's as bad as Breloom, but Infernape has no counters. There is no counter to Infernape in the game. And this is, you know, Infernape has recently become popular again. I don't remember Infernape being very popular at the end of Diamond and Pearl, because like I said, people still spammed Salamence, and they still spammed Latias at the end, until they both got banned. And, you know, at the end, you know, people were like, you know, I don't really like using, Infernape against all these dragons, because they just absolutely shit on me. You know, and it seems like this, you know, you look at stuff like this, they get absolutely manhandled by Breloom, because your counter is a Starmie, and if you have if you get that Starmie with a Grass Knot, or a U-turn, boom, that team is fucking done to Infernape. And that's why Infernape is so good, because it is one of the most incredible balance breakers there is, because you're always going to struggle with it. Even hard stall struggles with Infernape. Because unless you have a Gyarados, you are at least guaranteed, maybe not guaranteed, but there's a high chance a well-played Infernape, as long as it's strong and not some extra build set, is going to be a pain in your ass. If it's Scarf Infernape, whatever, it's just another Scarfer. Band is really fucking threatening, because it not only is it strong, but it is great enough coverage, and it is generally, it's fast, it's strong, it's not really countered by the failsafe Tyranitar, if your team has the failsafe Tyranitar. Some people forgo that nowadays, but generally speaking, Infernape is a basket case, and is very hard to put down. Which is why it's really good in the metagame right now, and that's why also people have been calling to return Latias to the metagame, which I think is a bad idea. But it opens up a can of worms, in my opinion. You're gonna unban Latias, and then you just go back to what the metagame was years and years back, which was basically just Latias semi-stall. I have not heard the phrase, or I've used the phrase, but I have not heard the phrase outside of his, you know, DPP. I haven't heard the phrase semi-stall in years. And if you guys don't know what semi-stall was, it was basically what it was. Semi-stall was basically, I'm gonna try and build it right now. It's just a standard semi-stall team was something like this: Swampert, Starmie, Latias, either Specs or something like that, Rotom, Heat usually. Then you had something like Latias, not Latias, then you had something like Lucario or Infernape, and then you had something like Scarf Tyranitar, or you had something like Scarf Jirachi to check Latios. And this was a pretty standard team, or at least standard build, you know, generalization of a DPP build. You had the Hazard Core, you know, of Swampert and Skarm. You had Latias, you had Rotom to be the Scarfer, and you had Lucario, and you had Tyranitar. And that Rotom probably wasn't always the Scarfer. Usually it was T-Tar to be the Scarfer, and Rotom would be like a sub-charge or something like that. So maybe not sub-charge, because that was usually only used on T-Spike teams, but you had Rotom. Sometimes you didn't even have Rotom. Sometimes, you know, because people didn't use spinners as much as they do now, so Rotom wasn't even always optional. It's more of a new thinking. People had something like, not Infernape, something like Scizor or something like that. You know, maybe not Scizor and Triple Steel, but you had something like a secondary breaker here. Whatever was common at the time. Like, you know, Salamence maybe. Salamence worked here too. Metagross worked. Maybe not Metagross, but you get the point here. It was a team like this, and this was basically what semi-stall was. You had the stalling core of hazards. It wasn't really stall, it was more balanced, but at the time it was called semi-stall, and that's really what it's remembered as. If you are from this era of Latias, then if you ever hear you hear semi-stall, you immediately think back to this metagame. But yeah, that's what current DPP is. There's so much Breloom. You get all these types of balances. Like, I'll show you another example. You have the Flygon, Breloom. I feel like this is my favorite type of team. Flygon, Breloom, Jirachi, Starmie, something. I guess it could be like a Zapdos or whatever, or Heatran usually. Heatran or Infernape or whatever your last one is, something like a balance like this. This is pretty common for the type of DPP builds you see now. Breloom, Tyranitar, you know, all that stuff. And that's usually just the common-ass DPP build right now. There's really not much else to it. This is really what it is. I have to edit that out. I showed all my teams by accident. That was stupid as hell. I don't know why. I was just instinct, but anyway, what is that? About 22-minute mark. 22-minute mark. Around 22-minute mark. I'm gonna have to edit that out. I accidentally clicked on all my teams, so I'm gonna edit that out. 22-minute mark. So up next, we're talking about now. I think we pretty much covered biggest threats, and we also covered current DPP. So I'm thinking, you know, Infernape, Breloom, and stuff like that. And now I'm going to talk about underrated threats. So what is underrated in Diamond and Pearl Platinum? Well, certainly not Breloom, and certainly not Starmie, and certainly not Zapdos. And Clef is really not underrated anymore either. So what is underrated in Diamond and Pearl? Well, first of all, I want to say something like Mamoswine. Mamoswine is fucking good in DPP. And so is Weavile. Now, a couple years ago, not even a couple. This is way further back. If you go back to the 2010, you know, 2009 Latias Salamence metagame, you will be called crazy if somebody ever suggested using Weavile or Mamoswine in DPP. Now, why was this? Well, when you had Latias and Salamence, you had shit like CB Scizor. If you ever remember that set, you rarely see it nowadays. I have not faced the CB Scizor in DPP in a very, very long time. But if you guys remember, the OG DPP players, Choice Banded Scizor was the Pokemon of choice to check Salamence. And Latias too, if they lack HP Fire. You would see Scizor on every team, pretty much every team, you know, because it was just this intrinsic need to have a check to Salamence. You had to have it. So, people used the Scizor all the fucking time. Scizor was the #1 Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl, usage-wise. I think if you still go back into the, let me actually see if I can find it. If you go back into, I'd look it up, but I don't really feel like it. I think I can just find it here, but my internet might still be down, so it doesn't matter. But if you go back into the, Stark Mountain, I have to find it. If you go back into Stark Mountain, I'm gonna try and look it up here. You go back into Stark Mountain, should be down here. Where is it? Did I scroll past it? Yeah, there it is. Okay. If you go back in the Stark Mountain, which was the official sub form for DPP, and if it ever loads, that is. If you go back there, and you look at the final usage statistics, I can get at least this is what I remember. August 2010 was the very last server statistics for Diamond and Pearl, the very last ever. You go back and look at these if they ever load, you'll see. At least I believe. I guess I'll check that later. These are all old stats. This is, you know, this is the very last statistics, and as you can see, oh wow, Heatran actually. Well, this is after Salamence was banned, but Scizor was #2. Heatran is #1, and it still probably is in usage because Heatran is fucking good. But you go back a month. Let me try. If I go back to I don't fucking know. July. You go all the way back to July of 2010. Then chances are, at least I think, yeah. Oh wow, Heatran is still above Scizor? I'm surprised. You're making me out to be a liar, Just Joe. But if you go back, you know, this is, yeah, okay, everything from there. Yeah, right, so this is just after Salamence, so obviously there's going to be a change, but Scizor was #1 for a fucking long time. Very long time. As you guys can tell. But, when you're talking about underrated threats, the reason why these 2 months are good is because Scizor is not particularly common, and a lot of the steals people are using are pretty much weak to these 2 months. Heatran gets faded by low kick. Well, not weak, but they don't like facing it. Jirachi, unless it's like max, you know, HP, those bulky versions, is not going to be liking a Night Slash. Bronzong is not going to be liking a Night Slash because it has no leftovers recovery. And, well, you still have stuff like Infernape and stuff like that. It's a bit too light to be consistently switching in. So against these kind of balanced offense teams, you know, these Tyranitar, Flygon builds and stuff like that, with Starmie as the bulky water, Weavile wrecks, and so does Mamoswine. Mamoswine with its Earthquake stab is fucking punishing. And albeit it is kind of slow, it's decent enough speed in DPP to do quite a bit of damage, and that Ice Shard is really helpful for stuff like Scarf Flygon and Dragons and Grass types and all that stuff like that. And it fucking stings too, because both these Muns are pretty damn strong. So if you're really looking for something that's cool, use these two. Mamoswine and Weavile, pair them with, usually they're paired with, I would pair them with Magnezone at least. Or at least something that can beat Skarmory, because, you know, if you do run into a Skarm, you're not going to have a good time. They're not going to do their job. But these two, very good Pokemon in their own right, and I think that they're certainly underrated. And I know a lot of people actually enjoy using them quite a bit. Like TDK built a team with Weavile, which I thought was pretty good, which you might see later anyway. Other underrated shit. I think it's unfair to call Gengar underrated, but I don't see it all that much anymore. I would definitely... Gengar is really good. It's always been good, but it is so fucking good. It's hard to, you know, say, you know, it's better than it is, but Gengar is really good. It really is. Gengar is fantastic at what it does. It's a breaker. It's annoying to balance against slower offense teams. It absolutely just shits on them. In general, Gengar is a really, really, really good Pokemon to use, and I think it should see way more usage among a lot of top tour players, but that's just me. It has such potential to be dangerous, but albeit, due to it being as fragile as it is, it also has a very, very high tendency of getting just absolutely demolished by Pursuit if it makes a wrong prediction on, let's say, a Tyranitar or a Scizor switch. Although Pursuit Scizor is not something I've seen in equally as long of a time as CB. No, actually, no, that's not true. I've seen it a decent amount, but not nearly as much as I would see Bulky Scizor, which is annoyed to death by Wisp or HP Fire, so, you know, it's counterable. And Tyranitar always has to be careful switching it off Focus Blast or a sub, so there's that too. Other underrated shit, RD Kingdra. RD Kingdra is fucking great. Once again, another really good Pokemon. And the reason why, I'm going to probably turn the segment to like 32 or something like that. But the reason why I think Kingdra is so good when it's either Rain Dance or even Choice Specs is because it demolishes. Rain Dance Kingdra, once you kill Tyranitar, a lot of teams really just lack an answer to it. Not to say Tyranitar is a good answer to it, but I am going to say that a Weather Change kind of kills momentum, and if your team is faster than it, which isn't that hard to do, and Kingdra, while it is blessed with a pretty solid typing, you know, I mean, it can get screwed over pretty easy. But if you manage to kill Tyranitar, then Kingdra runs fucking rampant. And it's a very strong Pokemon against these type of light balances, which, like I said, are Breloom, Starmie, Scarfer like Flygon or Rotom, Gyarados, something like that. Stuff that really does not beat Kingdra with a Rain Dance up, and stuff where Kingdra can feasibly get a Rain Dance in the game when they're stuck on a Scarf to move, or they're locked, or they just have a Pokemon out that can't threaten you. That's why I like Kingdra so much, and I really need to build a good team with it, because I think Kingdra is in general a really good Pokemon, but no one really, people don't use it as much. Although then again, in a metagame with Clef and stuff like that, a lot really just in general common, it is kind of annoying sometimes. If you're facing a really fat balance, then yeah, it'll be annoying, but then again, I think Clef is far easier to beat if you hit a couple Hydro Pumps than something like Blissey is, so maybe Kingdra is actually even better against Stall now, because if Clefable is your best answer to it, you are getting absolutely screwed if it hits a couple of Hydro Pumps boosted by Life Orb in the rain. I could go for the Calc, but yeah, like in general, Kingdra is strong enough that it can potentially even break these heavy stalls. So there's that to look out for too. Another really underrated Pokemon is it UU? I think it is. Or not UU, BL, I would think. Cresselia. Cresselia is another really good Pokemon. Maybe not really, but it's a good Pokemon. It's solid at what it does, and I think there are a lot of sets that I can run that absolutely, it depends a little on matchup, but they can just fuck somebody's day up. What I'm talking about here is something like the Martial Law, you know, Psychic. Martial Law made this pretty popular Grass Knot, Hidden Power Fire, which absolutely destroys some balances. And then the set can be changed up. It can be Ice Beam, HP Fighting, or HP Ground, Grass Knot, or whatever you really want to aim for, whatever your team needs. But I think this is the standard best set. If your opponent lacks something like a specially defensive Jirachi, this thing does indeed do a lot of damage. It does more damage against slower balances teams, but you know, it's gonna be kind of at the hands of shit like Heatran or faster U-turners and stuff like that, but I have been swept by this set by Sugar High many a times, and I can definitely vouch for its, albeit sometimes shaky, but potent effectiveness, and I can definitely say that it is usable in the metagame. Other sets are like Rest. I know Malfoy made a really cool Doug Trio Cresselia team with like Rest, Psychic, Sleep Talk Cresselia or something like that. It was like Calm Mind Cresselia or something like that. And like I said, that's definitely usable too. But you know, Cresselia, it's bulky to the 5th degree. It really just tanks shit and can actually surprisingly dish out a decent amount of damage with at least just a Calm Mind under its belt. And its move pool is actually really decent. It's pretty wide. It's wider than you would expect. So it has the ability to use quite a few moves and really just take down some of its normal switches. Is it the stall breaker? It's not a really good stall breaker, though. It really can't break through anything moderately bulky if it doesn't have a super effective move to hit it with. So there is that downside, but generally speaking, I would say I do enjoy using Cresselia, and I would definitely say that it has its merits. Despite what BKC and some other people say, I think Cresselia is definitely a good Pokemon, and at times it absolutely fucking rocks at what it does. So, I think I've talked enough about underrated threats, and like I said, I don't want this video to go on too long, because if it goes on for like an hour, it takes me 4 hours to render it, which is, like I said, one of the most annoying things ever. So I'm going to be going on to probably just, I guess, I wrote that best DPP players, but I don't know if I need to talk about that now, so I think I might cut it out after talking about one more thing, which is skills needed to get in DPP. Now, this is not a guide, and I'm really going to be only going over this until about 40-minute marks, only about a 5-minute block, but I am going to be talking about some basic stuff that you want to learn if you're going to be playing Diamond and Pearl, but competitively. Now, the first thing that, there's a big difference is that there's no team preview. Without team preview, a lot of players struggle because they don't have the team given to them. So you have to really always, actively think, what is my opponent's team? And that's an acquired taste. A lot of the times, people won't be able to guess it. You can be a great black and white player, but you can be a really shitty DPP player because you just are unable to guess the opponent's team, and you end up sacrificing stuff that you don't, want to be, that you needed. So, there's always that as a downside. Additionally, when it comes to Diamond and Pearl, you have shit like, that you really just need to remember. Team-specific builds. If they have a Zapdos, they probably have a Starmie. If they have a Dragonite, they probably have a Tyranitar or something like that. If they have a Metagross, you can predict their build to be generally like 2, different types. You can have the Lucario Dragonite Tyranitar, or Steel Dragonite Tyranitar, or something like that type of build. Or you can have the like Zapdos Starmie Flygon type of build. You have to get down these types of builds of Pokemon. You have to. And then we'll stop this at 1250. But you have to get down these types of builds. You have to know what they are. You see Hippowdon, you have to decide whether it's going to be within a couple Pokemon, whether it's going to be the Clefable build or whether it's going to be the Roserade build. Although you can have both. I believe KC made a team with both. But if it's like the Clefable Fat build, or it could be the Skarmory build, or if it's the Roserade, Hippo, Zapdos, Jirachi type of build, although that can certainly have Clefable in it, and a lot of those builds do now, but, what type of balance is it? Is it full balance? Is it full stall? You have to start learning this stuff if you want to be good at this metagame. You have to be, I think generally speaking, you have to be better at prediction in Diamond and Pearl, because you have to predict not only your opponent's moves, but your opponent's teams and their win conditions and what needs to be alive at the end of the game. You have to guess. And guessing is not always reliable, but guessing what your opponent's last is can save your ass a lot. And sometimes you mispredict and about what it is and it bites you in the ass, but other times it will be the thing that saves you. That, your opponent did not expect you to interpret that their team, it suggested this Pokemon. That would be their last, and it turns out it is. Actively thinking in DPP is key. More so than any other metagame. I mean, maybe not 80. It's similar in ADV, but I think it's more important in DPP than anything. Second of all, you want to learn all the new types of techs and innovations people are playing, and scouting in Diamond and Pearl is also really important, because Heatran can be holding that Chople Berry, or that Shuka, or that Pasho. You have to interpret which set fits which team, fits the type of team your opponent is using. Like, this goes along with the, kind of guessing game, but if you know what your opponent is weak to, then maybe you know what berry they're using, or what set they're using, or something like that. You're not just handed, when you start building in DPP, you'll get more used to it, but you're not just handed, your opponent's team like you're in Black and White and Oras. You have to really interpret what they're weak to, so what what their last is. If my opponent is like, 4 months deep and he is, really weak to Infernape, then maybe I can guess that his last is a Starmie or a Gyarados or a Dragonite or something like that. And you gotta think like that. You gotta think actively. Other random skills needed, like any metagame, I think those are really just skills that are, specific. There are universal skills that you have to have as a trainer of Pokemon, but generally speaking, I think those are some of the very best skills to have when you're playing DPP. I guess I'm trying to think of other stuff, but really it is just keep current with the current metagame. be familiar with what is being used right now. Because DPP changes a lot. So does every other metagame, but DPP changes a lot. And you don't want to be weak to the new thing. Sometimes you can reuse really old teams that were popular back in 2013 and they'll still win. But you gotta know what people are using right now. Because DPP, Gen 4, that shit changes. It changes a lot more than you think it is. And although we may have kind of really come to that point where DPP has been fleshed out to the max, and now it's really just coming back to that standard build stuff with the Breloom and the Flygon and the Tyranitar, you have to remember that some of the most creative players of all time play this metagame and shape it. Heist, BKC, Ojama. Now these are the guys who shape the metagames, and I hope that I can do that one day too. But basically, you gotta remember that DPP changes a lot. Although maybe right now we're in some sort of, stagnant type of, wave, that stuff can change. Right now I can't think of what it could change to, but you never know. And I think that's where we're gonna end it off today, guys. I rambled on for about 40 minutes, almost an hour, about how DPP is, there's a metagame that's great, and, what it was like, and what it is like, and all that stuff, and hopefully you guys learned something from this, and, I think we're gonna end it off here, guys, so in, about 41 minutes, I believe, we're gonna call it quits. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully I'll be able to put up some Pokemon Showdown lives for you guys, too. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next one. And, yeah, peace. Hopefully daily uploads will become a thing on this channel. I'll see you all later. Subscribe, like, whatever. I'll see you guys on the next one.